Hey, my name is Justin, and I wanted to share a solution to a problem I had. I was using GoHighLevel along with the MetaConversions API in order to send data back to Meta, aka Facebook, for funnel conversion events. But I had a problem that needed solving that GoHighLevel support couldn't solve just yet. I think they're working on a solution, but in the meantime, I wanted to share a little hack I had whenever you're using paid advertising to drive traffic to a funnel page. I want to help you make sure you have accurate reporting back to Meta so that you can optimize your ad account. So here's the problem we have here. I have this document laid out. If you want access to this document, I'll put a link to it down in the description. There's some resources down at the bottom that I used to make this video. So feel free to click it, download it. It's free. So here's the problem. We needed to send Meta Pixel Conversion API data back to Meta when and where it was appropriate. We're driving traffic, we're paying for traffic from the Meta platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and the audience network. We don't really use the audience network too much, but we're paying for traffic and we get these conversions. People opt into our landing page as a lead form, they opt in, but just because a lead opts in to a lead form on a landing page doesn't necessarily mean that they're a qualified lead. And that's very important because what I see a lot of people do, and they do it incorrectly, is that every time a lead form gets filled out, they go back and tell Meta, hey, that was a lead, go do more of that. But what happens if your ad is reaching the wrong audience, or Facebook is just putting your ad in front of people who are more likely to click on your webpage and submit a lead form, but they're not actually trying to buy from you, they're not actually trying to do business with you? That's problematic because you're giving false feedback to Meta. So how do we get better at that? There's probably a term for it somewhere in the marketing land, but the way we get better is we make sure that lead is a qualified lead for our criteria, for your criteria, before reaching back out to Meta and saying, hey, that was a good lead. So if you follow me here, just because somebody comes on your landing page and submits a lead form doesn't automatically trigger the Facebook Conversions API to go out and tell Meta, hey, good job, you got me a lead. We wait a little bit, we qualify that lead, and then only if it's qualified, we reach out to Meta and tell them, do more of that. And how do we do that? The way I qualify leads and the way you qualify leads is going to be fundamentally different. We have different criteria for qualification depending on your industry. If you're a contractor, you may want to have the person's address, you might want to have their name, you want to have their phone number, a preferred callback time, a scheduled appointment, whatever it is in your industry that you consider a qualified lead. Do not send information back to Meta until you get that lead so that they can produce more of that. So the way we do it is we use ads in conjunction with a chatbot. As soon as somebody submits a form, we have a chatbot who's trained on certain objectives and to get certain information. And once they get that information, then we have a workflow inside of GoHighLevel, which will mark that lead as qualified. The problem is GoHighLevel has a neat pipeline feature. If you haven't seen it already, I'll probably show it to you in here. But essentially, you can drag people along through your sales process. So if you haven't seen one before, I'll show you one here. This is just a demo account, but let's say you had a sales pipeline that looked just like that. And when somebody comes in for new leads, maybe you have a stage here, instead of warm leads, it's qualified leads. And when an item moves from here to here or to here, then you can trigger specific actions based on that. But the problem in GoHighLevel is that you're not able to do that with the Facebook Conversions API for funnel events. And what do I mean by that? This right here is a snippet from the GoHighLevel support document that says the Facebook Conversions API trigger event for funnels only works for the following actions: when a form is submitted, when a survey is submitted, when a customer booked an appointment, or an order form was submitted. So nowhere in there does it say when a pipeline stage change happens, you can trigger this. And you can test this on your own. If you have a funnel event, try to trigger it off a stage change. And when you drag a lead from one section to another, it's almost as if the attribution data is lost and that step gets skipped in your workflow. So it's problematic. So as people progress down your pipeline and you try to trigger this event, it's not going to happen. Now, I'm going to be very specific here because some of you guys are probably confused by now. I am not talking about lead events. Inside, I'll show you in the workflow, but inside of Facebook, the Facebook Conversions API, there's two types of events. You have the funnel event and the lead event. And there's more than that, but inside, relative to GoHighLevel, you have the funnel event and the lead event. So those two types of events are different. Now the lead event, which is associated with Facebook lead forms and on-platform generated leads, now you can trigger those conversion API calls with the pipeline, like I just said. But this is specifically for funnel events. If you're driving traffic from a Facebook ad to a landing page, this is for you. If all you do is meta lead forms, you can stay and watch so you can be educated, but this is not, I'm not referencing that scenario. That's different. So here's what we do. This is for somebody running ads to a landing page. I just brought that up, but here's what we want to do. This is our criteria, and this is just an example. You may have different criteria. We probably are optimizing based on qualified leads, right? You can be optimizing based on a sale or based on an appointment. It's up to you, but the most simple form of this is qualified leads. So we want to send a message back to Meta when and only when a lead is qualified. You set that criteria. We also only want to send that message back to Meta when a lead originated from Facebook and Meta. And what do I mean by that? Sometimes we have leads coming in from different channels. So attribution is very important. What if that lead came in from organic channels? Do we want to send that event to Meta? Maybe we don't, but in this scenario, we don't. What if that lead came in from Google Ads? Do we want to send that information back to Meta using the Conversions API? Maybe you don't. I don't know. If you have a reason for it, comment down below and tell me. So I'm going to show you how you can get that attribution, filter based on that attribution, and only trigger these events when it is a paid social ad or a Facebook ad. So here's my solution for this. It's because there's no inherent solution in GoHighLevel, I created one myself. And after creating this video, HighLevel being HighLevel, next week they'll probably release a solution and all is gravy. But up until now, it doesn't exist. So what I do is I create a conditional statement, and you'll see this. I'll demo this here in a second. But I create a conditional statement where there's a dummy branch. So you'll see I use the none branch in this example, but I create a conditional statement to artificially put the lead in on that side and pair it with wait steps until that lead is qualified in order to keep that lead inside that initial lead intake workflow, which was triggered probably by a form submission or survey submission while we qualify them. I'll show you exactly what I mean here in a second. So for example, while it's sitting there at the wait step, we have our chatbot that's trying to convert that lead to a qualified lead. Once that lead is qualified, then it'll move from the wait step and it'll keep going down, and it'll send the Facebook Conversions API. Note, this doesn't have to be done for the lead type events. I mentioned this earlier. If you're doing Facebook lead forms, you don't have to do this sort of hack here. If you're using lead ads, you can go ahead and send your Conversion API events off of pipeline stage changes. Don't get confused. Here's some considerations. So timing is important, right? So here in the meta docs, and if you can't read this, if this is too small, I'll link the link to this article down below. But timing is important, right? Meta wants the data fast so that it can make the best attribution and optimize your ads. But they also tell you just do your best, right? So here in the document, they say 1 hour helps to ensure that they can be used for attribution and optimized for ad delivery. Sending your events more than 2 hours after they occur can cause significant decrease in performance for ads optimized for those events, and events sent with a delay of 24 hours or more experience significant issues in attribution and optimized for ad delivery. This last line says it's important. If you're sending events with long conversion windows, send events as close to real time as possible. Do your best. Now, you can determine the timeout for these events, right? You can have a lead in that wait step for only an hour. And if you want to determine that after an hour, it's irrelevant, you just want to remove the lead from the workflow, you control that. I personally decide to keep them in there for 12 hours. And if they convert to a qualified lead in those 12 hours, then I still send the lead event and I'm seeing good results with it. So it's up to you. Another thing, attribution is important. This isn't a class, this isn't a video on UTM parameters and how to fine tune your attribution. I'm gonna show you a really quick example. There's nuance and all that stuff involved, but you can dive deeper into this. And if you want me to make a video on attribution alone, comment down below. And if there's enough demand, I'll make a video for it. But make sure that your media buyer or your ads manager is setting this up correctly. This is very important. This will enable you to accurately use conditional statements to segment your audience and segment the actions inside of a workflow. But also it's just good to know where your leads are coming from. So attribution is super important. This is a snippet from the GoHighLevel support document, which I also have linked below in this document. that shows the settings that you or your media buyer should be putting in place whenever you're running ads on Facebook or Meta. Enough of that. Here are the links. I'm going to go ahead and put my email down here. Dangerous, but I probably might get spammed. But if you need any help or you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to correspond with you and see if I can help you solve that problem. All right, let's get into the fun stuff. So let's go into here. I'm here in a demo account where we are going to create a example workflow. Let's call it something fun here. Let's call it Facebook Cappy Funnel Event Hack. Awesome. What we're going to do here is we're going to create a workflow where we trigger off of, let's say, a form submission. Maybe you have this form on a funnel page, and anytime somebody submits it, you want them to come into this lead intake workflow. Form is just a random form. Awesome. And first thing we're going to do is let's create another trigger action, because this is a more realistic example of how my workflows look. Sometimes there's multiple forms. Let's say form is discovery call. And I like to name these so I can identify them later. Save. Let's name this guy. So this is like a lead intake example where we may have ads going to different places that have different forms on them. And so anytime somebody comes in, I just want one lead intake workflow that services all of them. And so this is just a quick example. Here we have 2 ads running 2 different forms, and we can just manage it all in one workflow. So here, what we'll do is we'll create a conditional statement. Let's call this workflow trigger, so we can segment the actions based on the workflow trigger. Let's call this first one agent form. And workflow trigger is agent form. And that's why it's important to name these so that you can identify these later on. Let's create another branch for discovery call claim. Workflow trigger is discovery call claim. Cool. And then save. So at this point, presumably the only time somebody will come in this workflow is if they've submitted an agent form or discovery call claim form. And we have a conditional statement to segment the traffic based on that. Now I'm going to add a few items here just to simulate like real lead intake. So let's say tag, let's add a tag. I really like naming everything. You'll notice that. It makes it easier to troubleshoot later. So we add a tag called new lead. And then let's notify our team. Let's just do an internal notification. Now we got a new lead. SMS. All users, you have a new unqualified your bot is actively trying to qualify this lead. In real life, I'd put the lead's information like their name, their phone number, their email address in here. But just as something simple, you have a new unqualified lead. The bot is actively trying to qualify this lead. We use AI chatbots in our business to qualify leads. But we like to tell our clients that just so that they know what's going on. So we have a team internal notification, and then let's say we have an SMS out to the lead. Lead greeting. Hey, thanks for reaching out. Just an example. Cool. So that's lead intake, right? New lead comes in, they filled out a form, they go down this path of the workflow, and we say new lead, right? Let's add another tag here. Let's add a agent form. Cool. Agent form filled. Tag. Cool. Now let's go over here and let's copy this, copy all actions from here. Let's copy it to the discovery call. Let's change this to personalize it for this workflow trigger. Cool. Let's remove this agent form and let's look for a tag. discovery call, set. And in here, sounds good. Cool. So now we're handling lead intake, right? But at this point, the lead came in. We don't necessarily know where it came from. We may or may not care. If Facebook is our only source of inbound leads, then maybe we don't need this step, but I'm just going to show you how to filter based off of attribution because I think it's a good practice. So what we can do here is add a conditional statement. Let's say paid social. And yes, this branch contact details. What you want to look for is session source for first attribution is paid social. Now, you're probably saying, well, yeah, there's other paid social channels like LinkedIn and TikTok and all that. Absolutely. If you run, this is just the most common, which is Facebook. But if you run other ones and you have nuance in your business, just make sure you filter based off that nuance so you can identify that Facebook traffic. So the way somebody meets this criteria is they've come down. We determine if they're paid social by looking at the session source. First attribution is paid social. Assuming you have your UTM parameters that I spoke about in the beginning of the video set right, then you should be good to go. We'll go ahead and save that. And then what we want to do here at this point, we can do one of two things. And I'm going to show you the sort of the dummy branch way, but technically you could come down here and do everything I'm about to do in the dummy branch in this section, and then you can copy it to each one of the branches, but then it gets redundant, and if you have a lot of triggering events, it can get just outrageous. So I'm going to create this dummy branch here just so that you can see. And what we'll do here is create a wait step, and we're going to say wait until qualified. And instead of time delay, we're going to use a condition, and we're going to look at contact details. We're going to wait for a tag to be added, and let's call that tag qualified. And I'm going to set a timeout for 12 hours. So if this thing isn't qualified in the next 12 hours, we're going to let it exit the workflow and leave it alone. We're not going to talk back to Meta in relation to this lead. Again, now this is where you can customize this. If you want to just do 1 hour so that Meta has the most up-to-date information, the most effective information per their guidance, you can do 1 hour. You can do 30 minutes, you can do 24 hours, whatever, or no timeout at all. But I do 12 hours because I don't like to keep people in workflows forever. Save. Wait until qualified. I'll even put in here or 12 hours, just so that I'm very descriptive. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have a conditional statement that says if qualified, say yes. And we'll say contact. I wonder if we can, I'm doing this live, so maybe we can say event. No. Okay, cool. I thought maybe there was a triggering event based on the last event that you can do that with SMS and stuff. But let's come in here and we'll say, hey, if this lead has the tag includes qualified, then go down this route. If not, just exit. Now, why do we do that, right? Because some of you may be asking, well, you already had the wait step. That seems redundant. Yeah, we had a wait step with a timeout. So it would have passed this step if one of two conditions were met. If the qualified tag was added, or if 12 hours has elapsed. You want to determine what path it takes depending on which one of those things happened first. So in this case, if the lead moves on and they're qualified, they'll go over here, and here's where the magic happens. We trigger our Facebook Conversions API lead event. I am going to make up some stuff here as a demo, but here's where you would add your access token or your API token and your pixel ID or dataset ID, and event name is lead. Now, remember I mentioned funnel events and lead events? We're talking about funnel events here. Reminding you again, not lead events. So this is a funnel event and lead, right? There's all these other things that we can optimize on. We're just talking about lead. And I'm going to be very clear here. We only want Facebook to know about our qualified leads. This is my opinion. This is not an original thought. This is the philosophy of people who spend a lot of money on marketing, and they optimize their ad accounts to give best performance and best lead quality. Doesn't always mean lower cost per lead, but it means a better lead quality, which typically leads to a smaller cost per deal or a smaller cost per sale. and an increased return on ad spend. So lead event, that's the only time we're only going to tell Meta we got a lead when it's a good lead value. You can add a value in here if you want to, and if you're testing, you can add a test code in here, but we're not going to do that today. Let's go ahead and save that. Cool. We have the bones of what we want to do right now, but how does a lead get from here to here? We're going to use the go-to step. If it's paid social, we'll call it go-to CAPI waiting area. And say go there. Now, what happens? All this right here can be built out in this branch. But like I was saying earlier, if you have, right now we only have 2 triggers, but if we had 7 triggers, then replicating this 7 times for every branch gets a little redundant. So that's why I just like to create a dummy branch, especially because the none branch is typically not used when we're specifically using triggers like form submitted and we're segmenting our traffic based off the workflow trigger, which are the forms. They should never be in here and be in the none category, unless we were using further filtering mechanisms like tags and all that stuff, but you're going to have to play with that yourself. So what do we want to do? That fixes it for the agent form. So this, we should be able to copy all actions from here, add it here, and make it work for the discovery claim form. So here we go. That's the hack. That's what I use. Now you can take this further and you can come down here and let's say you want to provide Meta wait until scheduled. You can just do this until your heart's content. I have some doubts on how effective this is. The longer you wait to give Meta this information, it might just become less and less effective. But let's just say we wait until scheduled or 12 hours. We set it, but we didn't set it. 12 hours. Save. And then we can do the same thing over and over again. Now, if you're asking, couldn't you have just copied this and then went down? Absolutely. I could have and I should have, but now we're in too deep. If, say, scheduled. Yes. Contact details. Tags. Clients. Scheduled. Say. Now I am going to copy this action here. And let's say scheduled event will come in here. We'll look for schedule and we'll send that to Facebook. So if we're optimizing our campaign based on appointments scheduled, then this is the way to send those events over to Meta. Now you might be asking, yeah, Justin, but you didn't talk about how the lead got the qualified tag to begin with or the scheduled tag to begin with. Now, that's a good question. And that's handled by another workflow. So like I said multiple times, we have an AI chatbot who's qualifying our leads and we're monitoring. I'm not going to show you how this works. Like it's a whole video in and of itself, but we're monitoring contact fields to determine if goals were complete. And if the goals were complete, like we've got their address, we've got their phone number, we got their email address, and we determine that's a qualified lead, then we have a workflow that says, hey, when these 3 things are satisfied, add the tag qualified. So that's happening outside of this workflow, but this wait step here is probably, I don't know the exact timing behind the scenes in HighLevel, but it's probably checking every minute to see if that qualified tag is there or 12 hours. Hopefully that's helpful for you. I hope this video becomes irrelevant as soon as it comes out and HighLevel pushes out a fix for this. Or I hope that one of you guys see this and say, this is ridiculous, you don't need to do this, and comments down below and tells me a better way to do it so that I can fix it for me and my clients. But this is how I was able to circumvent the limitations of which triggers can actually send accurate data back to Meta to report a good lead or bad lead or any information at all. So hopefully that's helpful. Subscribe to the channel. If you found this valuable, please comment down below. And if you need any help, I'll post a link to the worksheet that I had up here down below where the resources are located. And yeah, have a nice day.